Now, in this tutorial, we're going to be looking at the basics of styling links, a couple of rules that not many people know of and not many people take into consideration, so a bit of advice on that end, and we're going to sort of be putting this into practice. So we're going to be creating some links on our page, styling them up, giving them a few properties, making them look nice, and you'll get to know how to style links, and all that business. So, we've left off from the last part of the tutorial. If you haven't watched that, we've got a container which we're going to be using to place more or less everything inside in this series, and we've got our style sheet which is called primary.css. So all you need to know is we've got our document, we've got our container, and we've got a link to our style sheet, which you can easily copy this code if you haven't got it down. So inside of our container, what are we going to do? Well, we're working inside of our container, but we're not going to be referencing hash container like this. Container A, we're not going to be doing that. We're just going to be using A as normal. So we don't really need to worry about this. In fact, I'm going to get rid of it. That would make a lot more sense. Okay, so let's go ahead and first of all create the markup for our links. So I'm going to type A href equals. Now my link text goes in here, so link text there, and I'm going to set a link to Google, so google.co.uk. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to load up my page and I'm going to refresh it. That was from the last tutorial. I'm going to get rid of in fact I will keep the element inspector open. Now you'll notice that it is purple. Now by default it should be blue, so let's go ahead and just change it to something else. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have visited google.com. No, I have. So let's choose something that I might not have visited. CA maybe. And refresh. Okay, so our text is blue. Now that's already given a demonstration as to what's happening there. Google.ca I have not visited, therefore the text is blue by default, and my browser is rendering that text blue. Pages that I have visited, for example google.co.uk and google.com, are in a purple color because my browser's saying, well, you visited them and I'm going to render it purple. Now we can override this behavior, don't worry. We can, it certainly looks, it tends to look a bit ugly. It depends on what kind of effect you're going. In terms of accessibility and making your page look good, it's recommended that you do actually use visited link colors. So you might, underline it if it's visited, which looks a bit ugly, but you might give it a subtle color change. But the difference between blue and purple by default, tends to look a bit old and tired and outdated. So let's go ahead and make some changes. So google.ca I've not visited. In my primary.css file, we're going to start to style up these links now. So obviously we need to select the element that we want to style, and that is A. However, we're going to be using something called pseudo classes, or pseudo classes, depending on how correct you want to be, to actually address what these are. Now, A tags can be anything. An A tag could be a name equals, like something here like top, and you might use a link to go to the top of a page or something. A tags can be used for that too. So what we want to do is we want to specifically style an A tag that is a link, i.e. it contains an href, and this here, our colon and link, is actually a pseudo class. Okay, so what do we want? What styles do we want to apply to our link? Well, let's go ahead and first of all change the default color. So I'm going to set the color to 000. Okay, so any link on the page we've set to 000. Let's go to our browser and refresh, and you see that the text color is changed to black. So let's go ahead and change this. So let's say text decoration none. Okay, so our options for text decoration are none, underlined, and there's probably another one, but I never use it. So text decoration none, that essentially means that we're getting rid of the underline. So let's go over to our browser and refresh, and you see that the underlines disappeared. So we've got a relatively nice looking link here. Maybe we should have kept the underline so it differentiates from other content. For example, we could have this is a link. So let's go ahead and get rid of text decoration none. And we see that that's sort of become part of that sentence. Anyway, let's go ahead and click this link. And we're through to the Canadian Google page. We'll go back again, and you'll see that our purple colour to our link has come back again. So, didn't mean to click on that. So our purple colours come back to our link. So we need to change this. Now, the rules for doing this will come a bit later when we look at hover and active. However, we might want to set the visited to the same colour. Now, we could go a visited. Again, we're using a pseudo class which is visited. And we could say colour there. Now that would work, okay? There's nothing really wrong with that, technically wrong with that. It would still work. Our link, although we visited it, has remained black. However, we're using two of the same colour in two different lines unnecessarily. So we want to make use of grouping these. So to group, we use a comma. So I'm creating a comma in here, or typing a comma in here, and I'm going to say a visited. So this essentially reads a link, so an a element with a link, and an a element that's been visited, colour them both black. Okay, so this here, refresh, remains the same. Now you might be thinking, why do I need to bother grouping elements? What's the point? Well, what you're doing is you're writing correct CSS. What you're also doing is you are ensuring that you're keeping file size down. You might not think you need a lot of styles per page, but trust me, style sheet pages get thousands and thousands of lines long, and they can be dramatically reduced by grouping different elements that share the same properties. And that's the whole point of classes, which we're going to be looking at in a lot more detail later on. So when we have a class, we give as many elements the same property, but we don't have to repeat any code. It's almost like function-based programming, I guess. Okay, so there's two more pseudo classes for links we need to look at, which are hover and active. They're the more exciting ones. So we've looked at the two boring ones. If you're bored already, we can go ahead and look at a hover and active. Now, hover is probably the most exciting, so we'll look at that. First. Now, if I wanted to keep the color black when we'll change the color when we hover. So I'm going to say a, and you probably guessed, the pseudo class hover. I want to change the color, so I'm going to change the color to green. Okay. Now, there's nothing really wrong with this. Let's just go ahead and have a look in our browser. Now, the link's black. When I hover, you can see it changes to green. So exciting. And we can also add a variety of other styles to this hover pseudo class to make it big or bold or not underlined, or the letter spacing massive, or whatever. It can be absolutely anything. You can have as much fun as you want with this, making your site look good by using your hover pseudo class. However, we've actually done something technically wrong. We've put the hover after our link and visited. Okay. Oh, sorry, no, we haven't done something technically wrong. I've done it the completely wrong way around. Let's just go ahead and do this. Okay, so this is still going to work. Let's just go ahead and refresh our page. Still works. Oh no, it doesn't. Okay, right. So let's put it back after. You'll see that if we have it before link and visited, it won't work. So you might be tempted to just go, oh, well, I don't want any style changes. I just want a hover to be black, a link to be black, visited to be black. This is going to work, but it's technically wrong. So you'd put it after here. Okay, so sorry about that little blip, but make sure you have it after. So a hover, and we want the color to be green. And noting I'm not using a hex based color, I'm using a text based color, which is fine. There's a lot more of these in CSS3, so you can go ahead and Google a list of them. Okay, so hover, what else do I want to do? Well, at the moment you can see that when I hover it goes green. That's pretty cool. I also might want to make it bold, so let's go font weight bold. Let's go letter spacing, let's say 1 EM. Ignore this if you don't already know what it means. I'm not going to go too much into detail on this video. Let's go refresh, and you see, look at that. It Goes all weird and funny. So we've created, some cool styles. Let's change that to 0.2 and go and refresh. We can make this bold if we wanted. Well, we've done that. We can do anything with this. We can take the decoration off. Text decoration none. Let's go ahead and refresh. Okay, so you can see that the underline is removed. So I could play around with this all day. I'm not going to, because we're going to waste time and you're going to be bored. So I'm going to stick with my hover color green, and I'm going to show you the last pseudo element, which is less exciting but still quite useful in some respect, and that is active. Okay, so what are the rules for active? Well, the active must come after hover. Okay, so we can't have an active here. Okay, so we couldn't have active something, and you might even be wondering what active is. Well, I'm going to color this blue. Okay, so a active here would not work. We need to place it after hover. So I'm going to go ahead and, sorry, I'm undoing things that I shouldn't be. So there we go. Let's go ahead and place that after the hover. We'll go ahead and take a look at what this does. So let's go ahead and refresh, and then you'll see why. So hover over green, nothing really else is happening, no sign of blue. Now when I click and hold my mouse and don't let it forward me to a Google page, you can see it turns blue temporarily. When I release, it turns green quickly again and then releases back. So it's almost like a sort of flicker as you're clicking a link, and it can actually make all the difference to a page and how it feels. You might want it to go bold quickly before you click it, or you might want it to even underline as you click it. It's completely up to you. I'm not going to go into the possibilities, and obviously the reason it comes after hover is because it's really in order. We've got a link and a visited, which one doesn't need to be before the other. Then we've got hover, which has to be after link and visited, which makes sense because when you hover over, you're choosing the utmost state, the cascaded state. After all, we're using cascading style sheets. And then active is after you've hovered. It's after the original state of the link, it's overriding the visited state, and it's as you're clicking it and as you're going through to the page that it's taking you through. So that's essentially it for basic link styling in CSS. We've looked at the 4 pseudo elements, we've looked at how we implement it on the page, and how we style these across our page. So bear in mind that these will style across everything. So if you put it in a container, if you put it inside a paragraph, anywhere, these will still remain active. And then down here, after these, you can apply individual styles. So you might want links to look slightly different inside or in certain parts of your pages, particularly menu items. You wouldn't want the menu links looking the same as your content links, for example. So you would go down, and after here you would override them styles, obviously cascading through this sheet and picking up different properties. So that's basic link styling in CSS.